And I think we are live. We've made a terrible error on this though, and I'm going to have to now try and cancel this. I didn't click something that I should have clicked. This is hilarious. 1 second, guys. Wow, live content, eh? What a mess. Oh, right, so we are live. Welcome to the Sales Made Simple live chat. This is episode number 10. I'm happy to have you on. What day are we? It's Thursday. On this Thursday afternoon. What is the date? Who knows? Some point in May. I should probably find that out. We'll clarify it. 6th of May. I'm going to show you why. I'm going to go behind the scenes. I'm going to show you why I don't know what day it is, what date it is, what day it is, what time it is in a second. Because we've been working really hard on a new, updating an old project, bringing it back to life, really doubling down on it. So I want to show you on this episode of the show some of the behind the scenes of that. And then if you've got any questions, I'll answer all of your questions as well, the best I can. If you've got any questions about life, sales, business, whatever it is, I'll do my best to answer them. Who do we have? Adon, I appreciate you, mate. What you using behind you looks great. This is I'd have to go into the other room to show you. This is a bunch of screens. I think it's 6 43-inch Samsung screens in a video wall. People assume this is a green screen. No, we can change them for each episode. I do need to think about having some kind of like animated background. I think that'll look smarter as well. And Adon also asks, what program are you using for lives? Keep up the great work. I appreciate the positive energy there. We don't use any program. So everything is mixed via a A10 Mini Extreme mixer here. So I do everything live in person, hence why the animation at the beginning of the show screwed up because I pressed the wrong button to launch it. But yeah, everything's done via literally video files running on computers, running on broadcast equipment. So we're not doing things via Restream.io, for example. I know you can just log on there with a webcam and have a lot of these effects done for you. That's probably easier. It's probably simpler, but I like to be in control of all this. So we're doing it live with real mixing hardware. Cool. Okay, so what I wanted to get into on this episode, and I'll answer your questions later on, I'll answer a couple of them, was the fact that we've been working really hard in the background on updating our training product. So you may know it is a Sales Accelerator. It's had other names in the past, the Sales School. And what we do every 2 to 3 years is we just get all the content, cull a ton of it, import a ton of new stuff in there, and redo it. And it's always been a video with me talking to you on the training product, and then worksheets after the fact, which kind of list out what you need to learn from each video, what you should be working on. And the latest version of all this allows you to input as well what you're working on and be more formulaic of it. Of here's a checkbox, here's a series of tick boxes, do this work, and then you're going to get the results on the back. And we allow you to track it all in the salesman.org accelerator program that's available and up and running right now. Well, the newest version of all this goes in a slightly different direction. And again, I wanted to show you slightly behind the scenes of this to tease it a little bit, but to show you what we're all up to and where we think the future of sales training is. Because I'm sure if you're in the sales space, the sales industry, this will be hopefully interesting for you guys as well. And one of the biggest criticisms I get about our content and just sales training in general is the amount of fluff in it. This is one of the reasons I don't recommend sales training books, basically ever. There's plenty of business books that I think are great, but there's not a lot of sales books. And every week you guys, you ask me for my recommendations and I give you the same kind of rebuttal of. I think most of them are absolutely rubbish. And the reason is that most sales books are one blog post that's then spread out over the course of a book so that you can sell it to a publisher and say that you've been published and do speaking gigs. That's typically how people in the sales training industry, how they work. New book every 3 or 4 years. One great point spread out into a book that you only need to read the first paragraph. That's not fair. The first chapter of the book to get the main points. So with that said, I want to go in the exact, if that's one end of sales training, which is fluff, I really wanted to pull us in the opposite end of all of this. And the way that I sell and the way that we teach selling inadvertently, this has come across from kind of 360 reviews of people within our training programs, is that we tend to use frameworks. So I want to show you this. This is still in progress, but this is the landing page that we're kind of working on at the moment to promote the new version of our product. So I'll I'll pull it up here. It's coming from my iPad, so it's not full screen on there, unfortunately. But yeah, the value proposition that we're going to be pitching you guys to get new members on board is that if you use our frameworks and you don't close more deals in the next 28 days, in the next month, we'll give you your money back. As in, sign up with us, use our frameworks. If they don't work, money back. Dead simple. No one in the sales training industry offers anything like that because most sales trainers know that they're selling just nonsense. And I'm really confident in what we're doing here. So that's going to be the value proposition. And is the best way to explain all of this is via the new landing page, right? And there's a few bits here that you'll see are work in progresses. But what is a framework? A framework is a proven series of steps to achieve a specific goal. Frameworks make sales success simple. You're going to be sick of hearing me say that. That's going to be essentially our slogan moving forward. We're going to make sales simple via frameworks. So here you can see a objection handling framework. And the beauty of frameworks, right? We can use objections while it's on the screen right now. We can use this as the example, is that most salespeople, they can handle an objection every now and again, but they're blagging the rest of the time. So you can spend a long time blagging it and eventually you'll become unconsciously competent because you blagged it enough that you've built essentially your own mental frameworks to be able to handle things. If I go to slap you around the head enough times, eventually your framework will be, hey, when hand gets raised, I move nose out of the way so I don't get a smack. That's what we're doing here with all the frameworks that we're building and sharing and training people on within the new product. Here you can see the objection handling framework of there's an objection, you acknowledge it, you probe for whether it's a real objection or it's not a real objection, solve it, and then move forward. Once you get an objection and you're on a cold call, a warm call, sales presentation, whatever it is, and you know that I've got to do this, and this, your brain relaxes, you chill out, and you get through 99% of what you think is an issue for you right now easily and seamlessly. It really is. Once you get this, once you get a framework unconsciously competent in your brain, in that data comes in, goes through framework, comes out the other side, which I'll show you how we can achieve that in a second, selling really does become easy. You get to then leverage your skill in finding insights and communicating effectively and the ability to write and build a personal brand and a profile online. All that kind of stuff becomes more important than you worrying about cold calling, structures of cold calls, how to get attention, cold email structure, things like that, because you just know it. You're unconsciously competent at doing it. So we'll carry on down this page. So Selling Made Simple Academy is a complete collection of frameworks for salespeople. And this isn't meant to be a sales pitch, but again, I thought it might be interesting just to run through the behind the scenes of what we're working on here. So when you jump into the academy, you get our sales code assessment, which is very literally the dev is working on it as we speak. It's been updated, upgraded, tons more content on that front. And we will build you a personalized training plan with all the frameworks you need. So if you never meet your customers in person, you're never going to see in salesman.org in the program, you're never going to see frameworks for communicating with people in person. We're trying to reduce all of this down. If I could give you one framework that would allow you to hit your sales target every time, that's what I'd give you. Unfortunately, sales is somewhat more complicated than that, right? So there's a bunch of frameworks that you're going to need to use and implement to be able to get deals done routinely, regularly, without any stress, without relying on motivation. You're going to know that you can just go to work, do these X number of things, and your chances of success are going to be sky high. As we mentioned, there's the assessment, there's all the frameworks, there's a practice tool that we're changing slightly versus the sales coach tool that's in the program at the moment. And then there's a community. So as you can see, this is a work in progress page. The community doesn't have the proper image on there. Well, you can see, literally has only been updated at the titles here. But these are some of the frameworks that we're working on and that we're building out for you. And one of the main things that I find both anecdotally when training salespeople in person or one-to-one over Skype, Zoom, whatever it is, I don't do so much of it anymore, but I used to do a ton of this, was that it's mostly people's personalities that are holding them back versus sales skills or platform building skills or whatever it is, and we'll touch on some of these in a second. It's usually people's personalities. People have weird beliefs about money, they're not setting great goals, they are pessimists, they are people pleasers. So we used our sales code assessment I think we launched it like 3 years ago now, maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. And there's thousands and thousands of salespeople have gone through it. And we've got really hesitant to say it, but I'm confident in the accuracy of the data now, that there's these 12 traits that are on the screen right now. Comfortable, money, assertiveness, weak goal setting, being extroverted, sales hustle, being optimistic, personal accountability, people pleasing, self-esteem, emotional intelligence, success mindset. It's all pretty obvious stuff, right? But these are the most important traits that 99% of, I shouldn't butcher the numbers here, I should give you the actual numbers. I'll see if I can pull them out in a second. But the majority of high-performing salespeople have 10 or more of these traits. If you don't have 10 or more of these traits, the biggest bang for buck isn't learning how to cold email, how to manipulate people on the phone, how to do weird selling stuff that they taught in the 90s. Your biggest bang for buck is to learn these different personality, to have these personality traits pushed into your brain box. And using frameworks, that's the quickest and easy way to go about it. So I'll get back onto your questions in a second, guys. We'll just quickly razz through this now, but there's frameworks for processes, taking competitor accounts, upselling your current accounts, cold emails, objective handling, building a platform, performance frameworks for increasing your levels of influence, motivation, productivity, and it's all going to be led by webinar. So if you want to get involved in this, if you want to see, I think we're going to launch it hopefully by the end of the month. If you want to be first to see what's inside and take a look at some of these frameworks, then make sure you get on the webinars when we start promoting them, because that'll be the way to check it all out. And we'll hopefully provide a ton of value in these webinars. And that's where we're looking. In fact, I'm working on a document today, right? So this is, again, behind the scenes. This just gets sent internally. This isn't beautified. This doesn't have the characters on it. But let me just show you. So, for example, this is one of the frameworks. So there's a ton of training that comes on the back of this, but the whole point of a framework is that you can explain it in 20, 30 seconds, and the person you explain it to goes, oh, that's what I need to do. So this is for people who have selling anxiety. If you pick up the first cold call that you make in the morning, or the first person, the meeting you have, or Zoom call, or whatever it is, and you sat there and you're like, oh crap, I really don't want to be doing this. I don't want to be here. This is what's happening. You have a anxiety alarm that's triggered. It could be, I'm no good at cold calling. I'm not confident at this. I'm not good enough. I'm not successful. The buyer hates me. They're just going to bombard me with objections about money, whatever it is. Well, that leads then to a coping behavior. Now, I found a lot of people cold calling, they'll use a coping behavior essentially of self-sabotaging themselves. They'll do a terrible cold call, just be able to put the phone down, because they're getting judged on the number of calls they make a day as opposed to how effective all of this is. So they'll just go back and forth, self-sabotage, until they get on the phone with someone who actually wants to listen, and then they'll have a decent call. So, and I'll go back through the feedback loop here. So you have a negative coping behavior, people's opinions of you, whether you're like, I don't give a shit what people think about me, and you say that actively, or whether you realize that you care about other people's thoughts and opinions of you. We're all wired, whether we like it or not, to care what other people think of us. When someone jumps in the chat and says, Will, you're a complete idiot, whether I like it or not, that will affect my self-esteem, my ego, even if it's just a tiny little bit, right? And then this causes a feedback loop where then your anxiety alarm gets triggered even more severely the next time around. So what we need to do is change your coping behavior. Forget all of the rest of it. We can change your coping behavior so that you have a proactive coping behavior, so that maybe you have a bad call and you stop, you sit for a minute, you write down what went wrong, what went right, what you do differently, and then you reset, and then you pick up the phone again. So you've changed the coping behavior from a negative one to a positive one. Well, then this is going to lead to more success. It's going to change what people think about you, feedback loop, and then eventually this anxiety alarm just gets diminished. So that's just an example of one of these frameworks that we teach over in the Selling Made Simple Academy when it launches at the end of the month. And this is what you're seeing here is a internal PowerPoint presentation that we're sending around to get feedback and double down on some of the content here. So that's what we're up to. And hopefully it might not be interesting, but I have no idea. Hopefully it's interesting. I think I'd find it interesting if other sales training companies open the doors a little bit of what's going on. What's the saying? How the sausage is made, kind of thing. But yeah, let's see. Is there any other of these frameworks that could be easy for you? So here's a classic one, right? I bang on about this all the time. This is how you close a sale. People get anxious about closing the sale. People think that you've got to do all this weird trickery. You've got to when the buyer sits and crosses their arms, you've got to sit and cross your arms. You've got to do all this weird body language stuff to stay on top of things. You don't. You need to ask one question, and depending on the response, you need to ask the second question. All you got to do is say, hey, does it make sense for you to sign up for Selling Made Simple Accelerator or Selling Made Simple Academy today? If you turn around and say yes, well, there we go. You're done. The deal is done. It's closed. You do this for meetings. Does it make sense to jump on a call today? Does it make sense to get your colleague involved in this process? Does it make sense for you to send over me your marketing material so we can take a look and see where we can help you with our graphic design services? Does it make sense to? It's all you've got to do. The buyer says yes, you move forward. If they say no, you just ask, well, what do we need to do to move forward? What does it make sense to do? And the buyer will coach you. They will literally coach you on what you need to do to move forward. And you go back around this feedback loop and you ask the question again, does it make sense to close the deal now? Does it make sense for me to send over the paperwork? Does it make sense for you to sign the contracts before the end of the week so we can give you a discount, whatever it is? So these are the frameworks that we're working on. This one, we've been banging on about this one for years now. Some of the other ones are newer. And that's what we're doing behind the scenes. Hopefully, Selling Made Simple Academy will launch before the end of the month. There's a few things that need to happen to make that happen. And if you want to check it out, make sure to sign up to one of the free webinar trainings that we're going to do. It's going to be essentially me running through a bunch of these different frameworks. I will then answer your questions. And then if you want to sign up, we'll probably do some kind of discount at the end of the webinar. And I think we're probably going to do a webinar every Wednesday. So we might do one UK time, US time. So afternoon UK, afternoon or evening, maybe evening UK, late afternoon US. We'll just go back and forth. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for you guys to check it out. So hopefully that was useful. As I said, I would like to see what's going behind the scenes of other companies. And this is what we've been working on for like 6 months now. I've had good feedback on everything that we have published so far. So let me go through some of your questions. Let's see what we have going on here. Ban asks, any advice on side gigs or hustles? I want to increase my income opportunities. Ban, feel free to follow up in the chat if you would like to me to answer you in more depth. But I'm assuming you're working in a B2B sales role. I'm assuming you're working in the B2B sales role that has uncapped commissions. You don't need side hustles. Now, one thing that you might want to do once you're earning enough is take some of your essentially your cash flow, your commissions, and invest it into something that will then build and grow and spiral, hopefully out of control in a positive way over the years and the decades. But for you to start a business, a YouTube channel, to start investing in cryptocurrency, whatever it is right now, when you could be investing that time into selling your product with uncapped commissions and hopefully crushing it, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be way more efficient just to stick with your job. And that's my experience with B2B salespeople. Now you've got to be in the right role. You've got to have the right skill set. Skill set we can help you with. Just go through some of the content over at salesman.org. We've basically covered everything now. We've like 750 podcast episodes at this point. So dive into that and just get hustling. What else do we have? Paul says, this is my longest dry spell ever. I've been an SDR for years. I don't spray and pray. How do I alleviate the funk? Longest dry spell ever. What has changed? Is this a dry spell since COVID? Then fine. You probably need to retool slightly here and change your messaging. Is this a longest dry spell as in like 3 days since you've got so you're an SDR, since you've booked meetings? Then that's probably down to you. It's probably down to let me bring this back up. It's probably down to some of the things that I mentioned on here. So you've changed a belief about money. You've become less assertive. You're feeling a bit crappy, and that's hurting your self-esteem. Someone's just shouted you down on the phone. You're not being accountable. You're not being optimistic. It's one of these traits that are on the screen right now. Can I increase these? if it's acute, if it's happened overnight and it's not a market shift, if it's a U shift, it's one of these things. If you go to salesman.org, we've done podcast episodes on each one of these countless times. So there's a ton of content for you to check out. So that's probably where I would start. Right. What other questions do we have? Giraffe Food asks, when's the next live stream? Every Wednesday. What? No, every Wednesday. Every Thursday. Around about this time. So I have some calls with some of the team over at HubSpot, and then I just jump on this call, this live chat straight afterwards. So moving forward, live streams will be on Wednesday. Live streams will be on Thursdays. Webinars will be on Wednesdays. Why? Because literally there's just that alliteration between webinar and Wednesday. That's the only reason why we're doing them on Wednesdays. The webinars might be streamed live on YouTube and LinkedIn. I'm not so concerned with your people putting the email addresses in and then me spamming the email addresses later on, like most webinars, especially in the B2B space, the corporate world, kind of focus on. If you sign up to our webinars, we definitely won't be calling you and pestering you to sign up to a product. We don't work like that. But yeah, so they might be streamed live as well. But these live chats are always on a Thursday. Giraffe Food says the background art is so good. That is our incredible illustrator Oscar. So the characters, maybe I should mention this. In all of the training, if I go back to the page here, so we don't do so much of it on YouTube. It's coming, but it's time consuming. It's expensive. We use all these illustrations. We use these characters. Here we have in the middle, we have Sam the salesperson. We have Walter the dog, who's his colleague, who looks at Sam. Sam's a bit of a fool. He fails all the time. He's what we learn from. Walter we use as a tool, as a mentor to guide Sam. And then Brian is the idiot sales manager on the right of the screen here. These characters are in all of our training. We storytell in the training. We use them to really make things hopefully somewhat funny, entertaining, as opposed to me just talking to the camera like every other online sales training, which is just crap. So that's where the characters are, and that's why they're on the screen behind me right now. Okay. Pinbanks asks, any tips on how to land my first SDR role? Okay, Pinbanks, feel free to follow up with this if you can provide a bit more information. But what is your background? Do you have any experience on being on the phone, on cold emailing, anything like that? If you want to get an SDR role, especially in a tech company, tends to be where SDR roles are, right? Especially the ones where you're going to make money and get the opportunity to get into a business development rep role or an account executive role where you can earn serious money. It tends to be in the tech space. You volunteer for a charity. Do some cold calling on behalf of a charity. Do something along those lines to not just say, well, I've got a degree in business, I've got a degree in economics, I've got a degree in this. I don't give a shit if you've got a degree in whatever it is. I do care, and I'm interested if you've spent the past 6 months on a Thursday and Tuesday afternoon or evening hounding the phones for a charity that you really care about and you really believe in. That is going to get you an SDR role. Now, you can, massage the truth slightly with some of this and say that you had great success in your charitable work or your volunteer work. Even if you didn't, it's going to be very difficult to prove that one way or another. But yeah, I would look for a tech startup to volunteer from. I can't really help over at salesman.org. We don't really do cold outreach. But find a company that does do cold outreach and see two things. One, can you go and help them? Can you do some calls for them? Can you learn? Two, can you spend a day shadowing some SDRs? Depending where you live, are there any companies that use SDRs or sales development rep roles near where you are, but you can go and spend a day or two shadowing? And that on a CV, a curriculum vitae for anyone out of the UK or Europe, or your resume. Volunteer work, shadowing SDR roles, learning about SDR roles, reading books on it, that side of things, so that when you do get an interview, you can say, well, I've read this, this, and this, even though, my thoughts on books. There is an element of going the extra mile and making the extra effort there. So there you go. Also, I would email a hiring manager with a script that you would say on the phone. I would do that. If someone emailed me saying, hey, if I could get a job at salesman.org, this is the first script I would use. Are there any jobs going? One. 2, how would you improve the script, or how does that fit in with your own best practices? An email like that would blow my mind as a small business owner, right? That is someone that I'd go, maybe it's worth taking a bit of a risk on them because they're so proactive. So yeah, there's a couple of ideas. Hopefully that's helpful. What else do we have? Ken, my man Ken, what's the best website to research a company before cold, warm outreach when selling a complex software stack solution? If you're selling a truly complex product, especially if the value sizes get into the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would want to do, which we train over at Salesman.org in our program currently, and I don't know if it's going to stay, because it's more for like big deal sizes, right? I would do what's called social engineering. I would try and ring up someone in that organization, especially if you've got the background in IT, if you can have complex conversation, if you can have a technical conversation with them. I'd try and ring up someone in their IT department to be like, hey, I'm looking to do X, Y, Z. Would this be good for you? Would this be bad for you? Who's important here? Who's not important here? Can you just give me that person's email address? Oh, fine, I appreciate you can't give me their email address. What's the best way to contact them? How do they like to be communicated to? A quick call or two like that into, especially if you're doing large deal sizes with large accounts. If you're selling to Dell, HP, Salesforce, companies that are doing billions in revenue, Facebook, Amazon, whoever it is, Oracle. If you're selling into any organizations like that, a quick couple of calls, find people on LinkedIn, or even just send them a LinkedIn message. Things like that tends to have a better hit rate than there being one holy grail website that has loads of data. I don't use any third-party tools to gather information when we're doing our outreach. It's typically our outreach over at Salesman.org is somewhat warm. People know who I am. They know the podcast. They know the different training that we offer before we reach out to them or we respond to inbound leads. But yeah, stalking people on LinkedIn is probably the quickest and easiest. But then if you can get that 1 or 2 calls with people within the account, the competition probably aren't doing it. And so you're a massive advantage because you've got that insider information. And when you do speak to a potential buyer, a potential decision maker, a player within the account, you can say, hey, well, I was just on the phone with Jared in IT and he said X, Y, Z. I was just on the phone with Mary in marketing and she said 1, 2, 3. That is a game changer when you're doing your initial cold outreach and when you're trying to get a decision maker on the phone. Let me grab a sip of tea. I am back on the caffeine. This is just a cup of green tea. We've got a new coffee machine. And so, I've actually got a bit of a headache from drinking so much coffee today, trying to sort out how to get the machine to do the perfect cappuccino or latte. All right. Manny asks, do you have any data or insights into why sometimes clients ghost you in the sales process? I hate that. I'd rather have someone tell me that they are not interested. Just curious if you have any data on this. I do not have data on it. I don't know what the data would be because you'd have to do that properly, you'd have to intercept the moment that you've just been ghosted and survey someone at that moment in time by an anonymous, the data would have to go off anonymously and be collected by a third party. So it'd be very difficult to get that data. But typically you get ghosted because of what's called the status quo. Not the band, the concept. This idea of the buyer is sat there, the money's on this shelf, right? And there's this big rock called status quo sat on top of it. The buyer doesn't want to move the rock because it's a pain in the ass, it's big, it's heavy, and it's laborious. And to lift that rock and take the money and put it back down is effort on their part. So either the value that you are offering them is not worth them lifting this rock of status quo off the cash, or the cash isn't there, or there's how can I extend this analogy? Essentially, they just can't be asked. And they're not calling you back because it's a bit embarrassing, especially if they promised you something. Maybe, here's to extend the analogy, maybe they aren't strong enough within the account, they don't have the influence to lift that rock, they've got to go to their boss. They went to the boss because you've been prospecting the wrong decision maker, and the boss said, hey, I'm not lifting that rock. And they can't do it themselves because they don't have the authority. So if you have correctly qualified the individual, the best thing you can do when this happens, when you get ghosted, is to send an email, make a quick call, super polite, and just say, hey, look, has something changed? We had XYZ date in the diary because you should never close a meeting. You should never close a call without setting the next date, right? You should say, hey, you didn't get back to me on this date. Has this just fell apart? And I find that maybe once, again, this is not real data, this is anecdotal, but maybe once every 5 times, once every 10 times, you'll get a response and the person's go, no, I want this. I'm working hard behind the scenes. I've just got nothing to come back to you yet, or I've been busy. It's definitely moving forward. And then that prompts them then to get to the top of the priority list and move things forward. So yeah, when you get ghosted, typically either the value that you've offered the buyer is not enough for them to be bothered to lift this big rock of status quo to be able to get the cash out from underneath it, or they're not strong enough. They don't have the authority within the account to lift it. They've gone to someone else and someone else has said, go and get stuffed. It's not to do with me. I don't want to spend the money in this way. Cool. That was a laboured analogy right there. Hopefully that was useful though. Okay. Antonio, the main man. I think you should be answering my questions, mate. I shouldn't be answering yours. Antonio asks, what is the best way to approach a disgruntled customer who experienced a bad experience with a previous sales rep? So I've been in this experience loads of times, right? Where there's 2 scenarios, right? One is in your favor, one isn't. If it's a previous sales rep at a company and you're trying to take over their account, this is great because that means that within the account, that status quo of which is difficult for you to go in and change them from their product to your product, that status quo has been lightened. That big rock has got smaller because they're pissed off with the individual or the company that's been serving them so far. So if that's the case, this should be exciting for you. Now, what's more likely is one of your counterparts within your company or the person who's been working your territory before you has been a bit of an idiot and they've annoyed a customer and you've got to go in and clean up the pieces and hopefully get the deal done. In that case, just be humble, open, and honest, and just go in and be like, hey, look, I believe you've not had the best experience. I'd call someone, be like, hey, look, it appears you've not had the best experience here. I'm a different person, same organization, and I just want to be able to help. Now, this is when your personal brand comes in. This is when the level of authority you have within a space and an industry. If you're publishing loads of content, if you're known within a space, if one of my sales team over at salesman.org says something stupid, then I get on a call with that buyer and have a conversation with them. It's immediately a different conversation because people know me. It's a cliche. People know me, like me, and trust me in this space, rightly or wrongly. I don't know if you should know me, like me, or trust me, but people tend to. And so my reputation, rightly or wrongly, speaks kind of volumes in this space, right? So I get on a call and a lot of these problems are just resolved. So yeah, if it's a disgruntled customer who's been pissed off by a previous sales rep that's not in your organization, get in that account. That is an incredible trigger event. This is something you should be looking out for on your territory, right? Or across the space that you're selling into. If there's a terrible sales rep going around from a competing organization, and they are essentially reducing these rocks of status quo and making it easy for them to flip it off and for you to jump in there and grab the account, then you should be doing that, an incredible trigger event. If it's a previous rep from your company who's gone around pissing people off and you're trying to make up for, I guess, lost time, then you just got to go in, be humble, say, look, maybe that person before was an idiot. I'd like to start afresh if I can. Here's some insights. Here's the value I can share. And again, that gets amplified if you've got a strong personal brand and you've got something to share. It's no more complicated than that. Okay. Giraffe Food again, the MVP of this live chat. Do companies care about degrees versus non-degree applicants? Or if one feels confident they will succeed in a sales job, one should apply. So I can only speak for the UK here. I don't have massive experience in hiring. I have no experience in hiring outside of the UK, other than the kind of freelancers in our team, in our remote team over at salesman.org. So Google, I don't think Apple have made the shift, but Google and Facebook a few years ago made a shift in their hiring process. And this is mainly for technical engineers, software developers. But this will feed back and trickle into every other industry as these giants of the industry of social media, of kind of attention in 2021 onwards make these changes. They now no longer require a degree, a bachelor's degree, whatever it is, to apply to their roles. Now, in sales is a bit backwards. Unfortunately, sales is typically not the most forward-thinking business unit within most organizations. Most sales jobs probably say need some kind of bachelor's degree. If you don't have one, but you've got experience, you are going to go the extra mile to get in front of the hiring manager. And as I said earlier on in the show, share the outreach emails, cold calling scripts, whatever it is, if it's an SDR role that you're willing to use. Your degree doesn't matter. If I'm hiring someone and two people are exactly the same, one person has a degree from Oxford University in philosophy or some other fluffy subject, and the other individual says, I've listened to all the podcast episodes, I'm really passionate about the show, I really want to come work for you, 100%, 99 times out of 100, I'm going to hire that person. Now, I might interview both of them, see how they both go, clearly, but I'm going to lean towards the individual who actually gives a shit, who actually cares about things. A degree doesn't mean anything. I've got a degree in chemistry. I'm a published scientist. I have, it wasn't my entire article entry, but my name is in the Journal of Computational Chemistry. I'm the worst chemist of all time. I was the worst student of all time. I wanted to go and party, get drunk, and do stupid things at uni. I enjoy some parts of chemistry. For example, my dissertation got the highest marks across the whole year because I was really interested in the computational chemistry elements of things. Rather than being in a lab mixing chemicals, as you'd imagine the stereotype of some chemistry nerd to be doing, I enjoyed sitting at a computer, programming it, and doing these like theoretical equations and trying to speed them up and optimizing them. I really enjoyed that. So I got the highest marks in my dissertation across the year, but probably the lowest in everything else. I just did not care. I sucked. So degrees don't mean anything. Unless you're a doctor, clearly you need to go to university, you need to be trained. Unless you're an actual engineer and you're building bridges that 1,000 people could die on if it collapsed, right? Sales, you don't need to go to university. Sales, you need what I was describing earlier on. You need a series of frameworks. You need somewhere, a job where you go and practice them. And then you need to get your head down for a year, 18 months when it sucks, when it's tough, and just crack on. And that's where you're going to find success. So I wouldn't be stressed out. If you don't have a degree, doesn't matter. If you do have a degree, great. Maybe you've throughout your university years, you've gained a bit of maturity, and that might be useful for an employer. But yeah. I wouldn't even be looking at degrees if I was hiring for salespeople right now. Okay. William Jones the third. Sick name, mate. I appreciate your name. A proper, effective, and efficient way to prospect for clients. Will, it does not exist. What you just asked for is the holy grail, and if I could automate or teach you that on a live chat, a proper, effective, and efficient way to prospect for clients, I wouldn't be on a live chat. I'll be selling my all-in-one mega solution for $1 million a pop because it would generate companies $1 billion in revenue over the course of just a few months of being implemented. So you've got to look at, in fact, let me see if I go back to this. We've got a framework for our sales process. So maybe this would be valuable to just quickly run through. So this is our simple selling method. This is the framework for it. This hopefully will explain why it's impossible just to have a all-in-one solution for prospecting. What you need to do first off is find your ideal customer. Most salespeople spam a marketplace of anyone who might possibly ever listen to them. It's a complete waste of time. You look like an idiot, and your levels of motivation just plummet every day because you get so many people not responding to you. And don't forget, you're also burning the market as well. The person who's not an ideal customer for you right now might be an ideal customer 2 years from now. But if you just spam them, they're going to recognize your name, recognize the brand of the company, the product, and they're probably never going to buy from you. So first step one of your prospecting always is finding your ideal buyer. And perhaps we can touch on that in a second. If there's any more questions on that, we can cover it in more detail. Next, you then need to, within your prospecting framework, you need to send them what we call an impact message. This is a message, whether this be a cold call, whether this be a cold email, whether this be you camping outside their offices in a tent and grabbing them as they walk to work in the morning. The impact message must make your buyer go, oh, what? So this, I just had a vision then of me watching this back of me, how stupid I look as I talk to myself. Obviously, I'm talking to you guys as well, but as I'm sat in a room talking to the camera, making these weird noises and faces, right? But you must make your buyer, with your initial message, go, oh, what? You must make them come out of this trance that most people are in when they get a cold call, like, oh, it's a salesperson, no thank you. Or they're going through their emails and they're going, oh, a cold email, no thank you. You do this by sharing insights. And again, if you've got questions, we can dive into the process of generating insights, where they come from, and how we get a message that the buyer does that weird face for. I can dive into that in more detail. So these are your steps, right? Checking we're on the screen. So you've got to have an ideal buyer that you're coming to, and this comes from data. This comes from looking for your CRM. This comes from people who've bought from you in the past. You're going to send them a message. Again, this is going to be A/B tested or C/D/E/F tested. One of these, A or B, is going to perform better than the other. So you carry on doing this and you eliminate that. You do this over and over and over, and eventually, one message, and it only works for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, whatever it is, it goes apeshit. And everything that you send gets an amazing response. Everything goes through the roof, and you have these years where you made a crap ton of money. That all comes typically from having the right buyer at the right place at the right time, sending the right impact message. And then the other step of prospecting that people don't put enough effort into is closing the first meeting, right? You send a killer email. If you don't follow up and get that prospect on the phone, the email was pointless. We always use this analogy of newspaper headlines. What's the point in writing the entire article? If the headline sucks and nobody's going to read the rest of it, you need to spend 99% of your time on the headline and 1% of it on the article, because that's what most people are going to skim and read. It's the same when you go through all this process with our simple selling method framework, or whatever sales process that you're using, hopefully using some kind of sales process. You need to close the meeting. And that can be as simple as on a cold call. Hey, does it make sense to jump on a call tomorrow so we can get into this in more detail? On a cold email, does it make sense to jump on a meeting next week so I can really explain this framework? I can really explain this insight to you and kind of follow up on what we discussed so far. You've got to close the meeting. And that's all prospecting is. Find the right buyers at the right time, and you've got hopefully got the right product to get in front of them with. Send them a message that makes them go, ugh. What? Hey, so you've got their attention, and then close the meeting. That's all prospecting is. Once you've got that done, you then move on to next step of the simple selling framework, or most other sales processes, right? Where you're uncovering the rules that you're going to play the game by, and that you progress throughout the sales process as well. Cool. The Sky Raider. This says, this stream sounds interesting. You sound interesting. I don't know what the hell that logo is. I don't know where your names come from, but I appreciate you. Even for a 16-year-old at 1 a.m., this is interesting. Good. I'm glad you're interested. And hopefully we can corrupt you and get you into B2B sales, which is business-to-business sales moving forward. Also, if you're 16-year-old and you're up at 1 a.m., it's probably time to go to bed and get some sleep. And follow up on this. Watch it on YouTube the next morning. Okay. Where are we? So another question. I'll answer this one, then we'll wrap up, because what time is it? 7 o'clock. We'll wrap up with this. Antonio asks, do you think automation will bypass human-to-human tasks in the sales process? So make sure you tune into This Week in Sales, which will come out. It's Thursday today. Might come out Saturday morning or Sunday morning this weekend. Me and sales legend Victor Antonio, in a friendly kind of setup way, debate this, whether sales are going to go more human or whether sales are going to become more automated, machine-led, and AI-led in the future. I feel like I did a pretty good job of debating it, but I think Victor would lean into his ability to debate this as well. So human-to-human tasks are human to human because of necessity. If I'm going to go to a meeting with you and we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss something, that is very difficult to automate because the buyer doesn't want to run through a spreadsheet, a checklist, an online form, an automated virtual avatar on a computer. They want to speak to a person. So by its very nature, a human-to-human interaction will probably always remain human-to-human. At the end of the sales process, a buyer's probably going to want to speak to, it might not be a salesperson at this point as we move a decade into the future, it might be a customer service person, but they might want to ring someone just to confirm a few things before they wrap up and purchase. But all of the elements leading up to the sales process, that the official sales process starting of a sales qualified lead being generated, they're going to be dominated by, how did you phrase it? By automation and machine learning. AI doesn't really exist, but machine learning in the guise of AI, right? All these kind of things are just going to dominate the sales process until we get to this point where we have a sales qualified lead, then a person's going to reach out. And your competitive advantage in sales is the fact that you can reach out, share insights, you can have a one-to-one conversation, and a computer can't quite do that yet because we'll give a person 15 minutes of time, but I'm not giving 15 minutes of my day up to fill in a form so that a computer can have a similar kind of conversation, even if it was more effective. So yeah, there we go. There will always be a human element to sales. But moving forward, it might, 10 years from now, it might be automated to the point that it's not really sales, it's not really commissioned salespeople at the far end of the funnel. It could be customer service, and it could be that sales it could be like a sales engineering side of things. There's a sales engineer behind the scenes pulling all the strings and pushing all the machinery in the right direction. That might be the future of sales right there. Okay, I think we'll wrap up on there. I hope you are rocking and rolling, whether you're listening to this, the Sky Raider at 1 a.m., which you shouldn't be. You should be going to bed and tune in the morning, mate. Or whether this is mid-afternoon for you and you've got a few more calls to make this evening and I'm moving forward. I'm Will Barron. This was the Selling Made Simple live chat, and I will speak with you again next week. And keep an eye out for the webinars that will be coming up in the next few weeks so you can check out everything we talked about at the top of the show of the Selling Made Simple Academy. Cheers, guys.